Brexit and its uncertainty are one amongst the many topics that Brits discuss day to day. Aside from complaining about the weather and how to pronounce scone, the British public focuses on its political turmoil within the compounds of the EU. The EU is a political and economic union made up of 27 member states which are located primarily in Europe. Some of these states include known neighbours of the UK such as Germany, France and Spain. However, places unbeknownst to the haste travel customers of the UK like Luxembourg and Estonia also find their way at the table of the EU. During the time between the end of World War II, with Churchill's call for a United States of Europe, and 1999, the European geopolitical landscape as well as its trade market went along some great changes, the arguably biggest one being an adaptation of the EU's pillar system in 1993, which would go to shape the further expansion and intertwined relationships between each of the 27 countries within the roof of the European Union. The UK entered the EU in 1973 after waiting for 10 years from its first decline by Georges Pompidou in 1961. Back then it was known as the European Communities or the EC. Churchill by no means planted the idea of Europe unionising, however 27 years later Edward Heath, the then elected Conservative Prime Minister of the UK, has got the yes from the EC and has proposed a United Kingdom European Communities membership referendum to the British public, in which out of 25 million who voted, 17 million Brits have voted for the inclusion of England, Wales and Ireland in the umbrella of the EC, only for 43 years later for that decision to be overturned. The UK in 2016 had 17 million Brits vote to leave the EU against the 16 million who voted against. This referendum has seen 8 million more people of the British public vote than 43 years prior. This small difference between the 17 million and the 16 million has led to the 5 years of sweat, divide and ultimate change within the UK, leaving it in an eternal state of limbo. With my research, I want to focus on how this limbo has affected and will affect the screen sector in the UK, how the uncertainty and incapabilities of those elected, and the unelected, made one of the few things keeping people together, the arts, left in the hands of those who don't paint, those who don't write, those who do not film, create stories or create worlds for others to enjoy. The divide between the politicians and the artists is greater than ever. Both know that without one another, the worlds they inhabit will become stale and obsolete. What is art without criticising politics, and what are politics that can't be criticised by art? I have researched and spoken to an industry professional to find out what the general consensus within the film world is on the UK leaving the EU. As bleak as the future seems, especially now with the world coming to a total stop from a pandemic, there could be some rays of light poking through the clouds of men in grey suits shouting at each other. There is a whole lot to the screen sector of the UK. Games, television and movies all fall into the same group. Focusing on film and how films are made within their own ecosystem of producers, directors, catering, equipment hire, actor auditions, etc. is a whole package to unravel on its own. The history of British cinema and its influence on European territories spans way before the uniting of Europe itself. In Germany, the share of British films on the market went up from 4.5% in 1927 to 30% in 1933, which is an increase of 25.5% in a span of 6 years. That was 6 years before the Second World War reared its ugly head and tore the lands of Europe apart. Britain's effort in making propaganda movies for the government sparked a phenomenal feat, one made by the British for the British. People from different classes and regional backgrounds worked and learned together in the war effort, losing their individualism but retaining their individuality. However, what the British filmmakers and the British government at the time didn't realise is the effect that their movies will have on people who haven't lived in Britain. Propaganda filmmaking wasn't exclusive to the UK. Many countries and its people were affected by World War II, and its governments did everything in their power to keep the morale high. One of the greatest British filmmakers, Alfred Hitchcock, whose career spans decades, has taken to France in 1944 to make Aventure Malgache. Hitchcock didn't just stroll into the Calais port with a camera on his shoulder and a clapboard. He was chosen by the British Ministry of Information, which decided to produce a pair of war propaganda dramas to help raise the spirits of people in occupied France. Alfred Hitchcock was the first choice to direct the dramas. This type of thinking from the government shows how well integrated the British are within Europe's problems. Brothers in arms and brothers in film, they united, not to help themselves but to help inspire the French to keep going and not lose hope. The films weren't in the Brits' favour. Aventure Malgache helped the French keep their spirits, made in their language for them. Britain leaving the EU isn't just leaving funding. It isn't just leaving the unionised schemes put forward by the collective. It's leaving history to help write. Britain's film industry isn't going to collapse under its weight as soon as the Big Ben rings on the 31st of December, signalling the end of the year and beginning of freedom for the UK. We know how certain people feel about it, but we also know how the general public feels, judging by the neck-and-neck vote numbers and the calls for a second referendum. But how do the industry professionals actually feel? In 2018, one of the biggest names in British and European filmmaking, Ralph Fiennes, has accepted the award for European Achievement in World Cinema. His speech was filled with emotion and distaste to the hate created by Brexit.
In England now, there is only the noise of division, but filmmaking, the expression within a film, can be a window for us to see another human being, another human experience, and we can celebrate our differences of language, culture, custom, and our common humanity at the same time. But the act of seeing another, seeing through the lens, carries in it, I believe, the vital act of bearing witness. Perhaps if we truly bear witness, there can be a true connection and a better understanding.
Ralph Fiennes sees the unity created by the EU in his profession. He sees the magnificent opportunities which collaborative efforts can be achieved with. There are more like him in the industry too. Eric Fellner has been recorded saying, "I still believe for the interests of our industry, that remaining part of the strong union is the best thing for us both commercially and culturally, and my reasons haven't really changed." This is a British film producer known for working on films such as Johnny English, The Darkest Hour, Hot Fuzz, all movies with their own clear British identity, all films which indulge in the UK's history, politics and culture. He's telling the industry how vital the EU is for the country. There is the fear of losing British identity, the fear of being a star on someone else's flag, but these are the fears which Brexit and its supporters are based on. Fears which don't exist in the British filmmaking industry, and you can see that Fellner realises how closing the UK's doors will help the unity within filmmaking. I spoke to Rebecca O'Brien, a producer at 16 Films, and she has outlined some of her concerns as well as predictions of what's to happen.
Okay, so my name's Rebecca O'Brien. I'm a film producer and I run a company called 16 Films. We make feature films and I work mainly with the director Ken Loach.
Right, okay. I'd like to sort of maybe just start off with 16 Films, as is, that's a sort of like your area of expertise, that's where you've been working. I would like to ask, first of all, how do you think the future of 16 Films, like future productions, will be affected due to Brexit and sort of the UK leaving the EU?
Well, I think it's difficult to say because we still don't know exactly what the Brexit deal will be.
Yeah.
And until that is decided, it's quite difficult to plan for it. Absolutely. I mean, what I do know is that pretty much all of our films are European co-productions. And we do know that European co-productions can still take place because they are governed by the Treaty of Rome rather than the EU. So that's a organization, or that's a treaty that was done before the EU. Right. So that still stays in place. So commercially, we can still make co-productions. However, there are other things which are uncertain, like freedom of movement, for instance. Yeah. When you do a co-production, you may want to do some shooting in somebody else's territory, or you might want to ship people into yours. So we don't know yet how free movement is going to be and how possible that is going to be.
Lord David Putnam, he's the president of Film Distributors Association. He's also produced Chariots of Fire in the 1980s.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he said that leaving the EU will allow Britain to forge its own distinctive British voice, which could help deliver a form of national rebranding. Do you feel like the EU is sort of suffocating the British film industry, or the voice that it's been going through?
Absolutely not. I completely disagree. I think that the um, British filmmakers have always been able to make films about their own country and use their own voice. I think that, in fact, in the last 20 years, less and less European films have been made with the UK as partners. And we have made more American films or American style films. Our voice has definitely been been heard across the Atlantic more than it has in Europe, and I I uh, I think this fantasy it's a sort of whimsical fantasy that by making less European films we'll make more British films. I don't agree at all.
Those in the creative industries are far more anti-Brexit than the rest of the country. A poll by the Creative Industries Federation, or the CIF, found 96% of its members voted Remain in the 2016 referendum. Film as a whole, not even the UK, will suffer greatly due to this divide. This is a sort of borderless business, Jeremy Thomas says, a producer who makes films completely different from someone like Fellner. He also realises how important staying together and not being divided is. As previously stated, politics and art are important, but in no shape, way or form are they to dictate how films are made. We know how that turned out already. Funding and film go hand in hand. There are beautiful no-budget films made by creatives around the world, but it's no secret that money helps. The help of the screen sector is nearly $8 billion to the UK economy and generating over 137,000 jobs in 2016 alone. Funding to the films isn't the only thing that can be lost when Brexit happens. It isn't as plain as that. The Creative Industries Federation said that £87 billion a year which the sector generated for the economy was at risk if immigration was restricted. A survey of 250 firms conducted by the CIF found 3/4 employed EU workers, and 2/3 say they could not fill those jobs with British recruits. In this country, besides money from production studios and companies, there are extra incentives which can help people make their projects. The British Film Commission states 4 different ways in which a UK film production can be funded. First off is the most widely noticed, BFI or British Film Institute, which invests £26 million of lottery funds per year to support film development, production and distribution activity in the UK. Then there is Film 4, who are Channel's 4 film production arm. Film 4 invests £15 million annually to develop and finance for theatrical release in cinemas. They mostly work collaboratively with filmmakers and often in partnership with other funders. Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is a UK government-designed scheme to help smaller, unquoted trading companies to raise finance by offering a range of tax reliefs to investors who purchase new shares in those companies. The model has become widely used in film development and production. These 3 sections of funding are what is going to be available until further notice after the UK leaves the EU at the end of 2020. However, under the Creative Europe scheme, which runs from 2014 to 2020, the UK had access to €1.46 billion worth of funding. That's £1.32 billion, which can fund any TV, film, animation production. Out of that sum, the money is divided upon many European and also non-European countries. The Creative Europe Desk UK website states that participation in Creative Europe is not restricted to EU member states, meaning that after the UK leaves the EU, they can still be a part of this fruitful and rewarding programme. The UK has chosen not to participate in the 2021 to 2027 scheme. This means the UK will no longer have access to what could be more than £1.32 billion in additional funding in order to continue film production in the UK. When the UK was a part of the 2014-2020 scheme, the Creative Europe has awarded €89.5 million or £81.2 million from 2014 to 2018, with the last 2 years not to be updated as of yet. Meaning that when the updated report comes, theoretically this sum can go up by £40 million. This helped 376 UK-based cultural and creative organisations and audiovisual companies gain funding. Additionally, 190 UK films get distributed to other European countries. This programme continues to help bridge the gap of UK film and its distinctive identity being widely recognised in the European states. Doing the maths, annually over 4 years, Film 4 and the BFI have given £164 million to film productions in the UK, alongside the £81.2 million awarded by the Creative Europe scheme, that is over £245 million from additional filming funds alone. Leaving the scheme, the UK has now at least purged a third of funding for the next 6 years. By leaving, the UK government didn't just purge the money which could help people fund their projects. They left schemes such as Europa Cinemas, which funds the programming of European films with special emphasis on non-national European titles. The scheme allowed for 962 cinemas to be supported with €10 million. If each cinema got an exact amount of the 10 million, that would be over €10,000 or over £9,000 each cinema would get. The Bobbish in London, the Queen's Film Theatre in Belfast, and Hyde Park Picture House, which I'm sure a few of you are familiar with, are all European cinemas funded theatres. Leaving that scheme has closed even more doors for the UK film to thrive abroad and for other films to thrive here. Experts from fields that aren't film related, such as Louise Popple, a senior professional support lawyer, sees how Brexit and leaving this scheme will affect not just funding. If there is a downturn in the industry, the loss will not only be an economic one. The UK will also lose some of the soft power or cultural influence it has on the world. That loss cannot be quantified but will be hard felt. Taylor Wessing, a media and tech law company who Louise works for, had this to say. Brexit will, however, place a number of stresses on the industry, as well as the potential loss of the current favourable regulatory regime. There are wider issues of loss of access to talent and funding, adding the possibility of a recession, and the current growth in the industry could slow or even reverse. These are just speculations, but the sense of impending doom is so apparent. The concerns and seemingly centristic journalist pieces share the same echoes of the likes of Ralph Fiennes, Eric Fellner, and Jeremy Thomas. Why ruin a good thing? On a chance that it could slightly be better? To close our borders and minds from the outside worlds, Michael Rabager, the author of Directing, Film Techniques and Aesthetics, said, "The cinema's strength and popularity lie with its power to make an audience see and feel from someone else's point of view. In the cinema, we see through different eyes and experience visions other than our own. Just as importantly, the best cinema is relativistic. That is, it allows us to experience other related but opposing points of view." At the end of the day, if the UK wants to leave and close its borders on hundreds, if not thousands of different films which show us what life outside of the UK is like, they will. The cinema-hungry public of the UK will still be able to see these movies. Films like Son of Saul, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari or Run Lola Run aren't going to automatically be wiped from anyone's screen come 12 AM January 1st, 2021. Netflix is still going to be around. Amazon Prime and Hulu will still be there for people to view. However, all of those are American-owned businesses, with most films in the platforms showing American productions or just films and TV in English. We have Mubi, which really concentrates on an international and multi-European array of films. But with that one being one of the few streaming options that can provide easy access to European films, the UK leaving will just make it that bit harder to access European movies. Not only that, the creation of these films and distribution would be both harder here and abroad. Curzon was among 4 UK distributors to receive a total of €551,000 from Creative Europe in October 2018 to support the release of 10 European films in the UK. Curzon received backing for 6 of those titles. The company also receives Creative Europe backing across the other aspects of its business, including its cinema chain and its VOD platform. The fact that the UK is turning its back on these films, on the creators of these carefully crafted worlds, on the people who make the UK's films and worlds into reality by immigrating here and lending their talents to this country is what saddens a lot of the industry professionals the most. The EU allows freedom of movement to let people across the land work freely whether they please without having to worry where they're from, only based on the merit of work they are judged. Nothing else. The big silver lining which a lot of people in and outside of the industry are talking about is the Big Brother Hollywood. A BBC article outlining the possibilities of Brexit has written, "Britain's film and TV industries have been booming of late, thanks largely to Hollywood studios choosing the UK to film blockbusters like Solo, A Star Wars Story, Mission Impossible Fallout, and Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom. Foreign studios spent $1.7 billion in the UK in 2017, almost double the amount spent 4 years previously. BFI's Screen Business Report in 2018 has shown that productions supported by the UK screen sector tax reliefs reached a record total of £3.16 billion in profit in 2016. Film production represented 54% of this total, but there are strong contributions from HETV, 28%, and video games, 12%. In 2019, the UK has given $1.1 billion in the tax relief to film, TV, and creative industries. This means that the budget from the EU, not counting production companies' money, is 0.07% of the actual budget for film, TV, and creative industry. This statistic can be easily manipulated and shown to people, convincing them that the UK doesn't need the EU. However, for films in the UK to qualify for the tax relief, the project will need to pass the BFI cultural test. There are 4 sections in the cultural test for film, labelled A to D. Each question also has a certain point value, as well as each section has a summed up value at the end of it. The full test has a maximum of 35 points which can be acquired with a minimum of 18 to pass the test. Section A consists of cultural content and specifies rules regarding what the film is actually about. This is the biggest and arguably most important sections for the test, as passing it 100% allows the film which is applying for the test to be considered British. Section B is titled Cultural Contribution, and it focuses on what the film can do for the British culture. This section only has one question, which asks if the film demonstrates British creativity, British heritage, and or diversity. Section C is called Cultural Hubs. It is split into two questions, C1 and C2. This section informs the BFI where things such as principal photography, VFX, SFX recordings, and audio-video post-production has taken place. If 50% or more of these things have taken place in the UK, the production which is applying for funding will gain points. There are additional points available to the productions which have 80% or more of VFX, SFX, or principal photography taken in the UK. Last is the Cultural Practitioners section, Section D. This section focuses on people making the film and their nationality or resident status. If any or all of the other three sections seem like they were fine and had nothing to do with Brexit, I'd like to focus on this one in particular. There is nothing wrong with celebrating or even rewarding British culture and cinema. However, for the government to talk about how films made here will get more funding and tax breaks, they need to realise that if things such as BFI culture tests are one of the main sources for extra funding, the likelihood of variety in the UK filmmaking scene will narrow down throughout the years. This is once again another vital reason that I believe the UK needs to stay in the EU, or at least the Creative Europe programme. Funding in the UK doesn't reward difference of opinion or status. It is self-centred and backwards. Creative Europe's endeavours to bring cinema lovers together will not be able to be replicated with the current way that the UK is going forward. Leaving the EU will have some consequences. Not to say that some good can't come out of it, but to me and the filmmaking world it seems like a bad idea. There is more to the world than cinema, movies and entertainment, but to the artists who have suffered their whole lives in order to be able to express themselves in the only way they can, to the artists who are ridiculed for pursuing their dreams, and to the artists who weren't afraid to say something against the grain, I say, stay strong. As we all know, this isn't the end. We will still have cinema, but we need to fight to keep it ours. We all know that we can keep making our art, hard as it may be. I want to reiterate the point of this video essay was to expose the flaws of how inaccurate the dealings with Brexit were and how damaging it might be to the industry. Because that was the point, the uncertainty, hence I say might. Laying down all the facts, I see that my opinion hasn't changed. I challenged myself to hear other opinions, to listen for things that could sway me to even a centristic approach. But to hear empty promises filled with nationalistic ideas from the likes of Boris Johnson, Theresa May, Margot James and Nigel Farage does not sway me one bit. The UK might shut its doors on the EU, but I'd know deep down, all of us won't.